Okay, quick guess. How big, how big do you think Times Now is? How many people watch it? How many people? Does anybody know? It reached on an average 1.7 million people a day in 2016. Okay? Now, how many people did Aaj Tak reach on an average day in 2016? 48 million people. That's the difference between the reach of English versus the reach of any Indian language, Hindi being the largest because it's spoken by the largest number of people. You know, if you look at the list of top 10 news channels, for instance, and I've looked at this list for the last 3 to 5 years, I just did it for some presentation. There is not a single English channel in that. The second largest is a Telugu channel. The 8th or the 9th one is a Tamil channel. And I'm talking news channels. If you looked at the top media groups in India, Sun Network is one of the largest. Every major media company, whether it's Star, Zee, Viacom, gets about 1/5 to 1/4 of their revenues from non-Hindi languages. They are not English. They are most of them are Hindi. So their flagships will be a Colors or a Star Plus. But they make huge amounts of money. Let's say Star paid about $300 or $400 million to acquire Ma TV. So the potential of Indian languages and within the market, our love for consuming entertainment or news in our languages is well known. But it doesn't show up as much online. And that's what we're here to discuss. And with that, I'm going to come to Rahul last because you're Google. I want the publishers to speak first before I get the platform in here. So
Google is also a publisher. That's what they say, right?
Well, they don't come under the same bracket, let's say, in a regulatory or industry ecosystem. They are
or revenues for that matter.
They are the monopoly platform. Rahul is going to kill me on this. Okay, Pradeep, I'd like you to take on first.
Okay, yeah. So Vanita, I thanks for the audience for patiently waiting for this panel to begin. I think we are slightly behind schedule. We will try and make it worth your while. I think a quick round of introductions, briefly about what I do would help. So I run Sakal Media Group. Sakal Media is the largest Marathi language media group in the state of Maharashtra and Goa. Our prime claim to fame is Sakal newspaper. We also have a news television business called Sam Television. We have digital properties, which is eSakal, which is the web portal and the application version of our main publication offering. We also have specialized offerings on specific audiences like Sarkarnama, which is a political bulletin and a political website and a political app that kind of covers the audience that is interested in political news. So we have done some diversification in our digital offerings to include other areas that are specific audience interest. I think to sort of just give a one-sentence answer to the initial challenge that is there, that we believe that the opportunity for regional publishers, Indian language publishers, to really capitalize on this humongous opportunity is massive, and we have not even scratched the surface yet. I come here not as a subject matter expert, but mostly as a learner from my other panelists and from all of you in figuring out this ecosystem and figuring out what more we can do, because we are just at baby steps right now.
Before you move on, I mean, what is Sakal's online presence in terms of, traffic? What kind of traction do you have? Could you share some of that with us?
Yeah, so I can, share some of the numbers. So we have over 1 million page views on our social media handle and on our website, almost on a daily basis. That's a number that we are able to manage. We get anywhere between 350,000 to 400,000 unique visitors that consistently come to us over a period of 1 month. In terms of monetization, I wouldn't like to share too many numbers because it's in a stage of infancy, like I said. But we believe that the opportunity is pretty large, which is why we are making serious investments now in this area. I think our investments are now maybe about 3 to 4 quarters old, so it's still pretty early, I would say.
And तुमची website Marathit आहे की Hindi?
Marathi, absolutely.
Sorry, I just asked him, is your website in Marathi or in some other
100%
language?
Marathi.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Gyan. I had the digital business for Dainik Bhaskar. So Dainik Bhaskar, so we have a couple of properties in Hindi, Gujarati and Marathi. And Hindi obviously the largest. So at a DP digital level, we do about 100 million unique users on a monthly basis. and we do about 3 billion page views on a monthly basis. And I think, so what we have seen over the last couple of years is, obviously we have been growing rapidly, in multiples over the last couple of years. And I think the language story on the publishing side and on the user side is very real, because everyone knows that, and we have been talking about language being the largest, because it has to be the largest, because India just has about 122 million people who speak English. So if internet has 400 million people online, so they have to be the language audience. Maybe the advertiser side is a little slow to catch up, but I'm sure they will.
Absolutely. In fact, I had that one of my questions.
Hi, my name is Anoop, and I head the digital business for Asianet News Network. Just a brief about the network. Asianet News Network is one of South India's largest news media and entertainment groups, with brands, marquee brands such as Asianet News, Suvarna News, Kannada Prabha, Indigo 919. The group covers about 75 million users. That's the sort of reach which we have across, the languages being Malayalam, Kannada, and English predominantly. The digital play, I'm just coming to that, is about 18 months old, as I think Pradeep mentioned. It's just about 18 months old, sort of a startup within the behemoth. We cover 4 languages, effectively the South Indian languages: Malayalam, Kannada, Tamil, and Telugu, and English. So positioning itself as South India's, almost like a gateway to South India's largest video news network, video news platform online. About numbers, I think we are, over the last 5 months, we've seen some tremendous growth, about 100% growth over the last 5-6 months, which we have seen. We closed about August with around 12 to 15 million uniques. And that's the sort of audience size which we reach out to. Yeah.
Rahul?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rahul. I currently manage the large partnerships. And in my current role, what I do is I work with publishers and broadcasters, and we help them building monetization strategies and profitable digital businesses. When I talk about the platform, I think 2 years back, we as Google realized that if we don't embrace the Indian languages, we'll be out of this market. And that's when we started. I remember I used to have product managers coming in, and we would take them all over, coming in from Mountain View, and we would take them to markets like Gafar Market, Sector 14, now, and telling them how actually the Indian user experiences the internet. And so that was 2 years back. But today, I think we've made great steps. We've got our Hindi, so the Hindi voice search is getting very successful. It's actually growing at 400%. We've got voice search now in 9 languages. We've got YouTube is obviously more Indian language than English. And across our products, we are more focused on getting the Indian language angle. Maps is on 4 languages also, which has got huge usage. So I think across the board, we've made a lot of investment in actually embracing Indian languages.
How did you choose the 9 languages, and which are these?
So we've actually gone from a perspective of the order. So obviously English was one because that's a legacy which comes with it, right?
Hindi.
Then we've actually, yes. Then we've done Hindi, Bangla, Telugu, Tamil, Gujarati, Marathi.
Okay.
So we've got like 9 languages up and running. What we're also doing is, so we realize that, okay, some of the interesting thing that the internet across, and we looked at it, right? So internet across is, so 50% of the total internet content in the world is in English, right? And what is shocking when we looked at the numbers, that Hindi and Arabic, which have over 300 million speakers across the world, have barely a fraction of that. So therefore, that content became a big issue, right? And that's when we started working on translation in a big way. So now we've invested in translation in a huge way. So we've got translation also in like 9 languages.
Okay.
And Gyan has been seeing some of the alpha products. So for the last 2 years, from where we've come, at a 20% accuracy, because we're using like neural net machine learning. So now we are at 80% accuracy on machine learning and translation. But I know there is still a lot more
But
to
you
do.
know, you mentioned translation, and I've done a lot of work around Indian languages, especially in popular media, and it does very well. So I'm not surprised that in fact, I think what surprises me is that it hasn't been monetized better. I would have thought the traffic is a given. But I find that ecosystem is a big challenge, you know, whether it's fonts, whether it's original content. You know, you actually put your finger on the biggest problem that one always sees. It's always translated stuff. Where is the original? You know, if you say that Aaj Tak revolutionized the Hindi news market, because we were till then, it was about NDTV and Star News were in English, and there was Doordarshan, but we did not have, I haven't seen the Aaj Tak equivalent in other languages. And I'm not talking only news, but I'm saying that original content, I mean, and that is one of the, what are the other ecosystem challenges, whether it's fonts, whether it's hardware, I don't know.
Yeah, so
I'd
I
like you
can
guys
give
to-
you the platform perspective, and then I think the speakers here have a better view on that. But I can talk from a YouTube perspective, right? 2014 was the time when the entire English content started getting created, right? So we saw TVFs of the world and creating a lot of English content. And 2015, we also, so there was, obviously they were very successful and they still continue to grow. We suddenly started seeing in 2015, we saw a lot of content being produced from South India. So down south, they were the ones, a lot of new content creators actually came from down south. And 2016 has been just, it's the complete, when Indian languages have arrived.
Really?
And I'll tell you, Gyan and I were discussing this. Some of you, I don't know if you have ever seen this creator called Technical Sharmaji. It's a fantastic story, right? He was interested in technology, but all he saw was Rajiv Makhni's tech show, which he only understood 50%. So he's like, why don't I create content which is in Hindi? It's simple, right? He buys the phone, and that's where he started. He would buy a phone and literally started buying these phones and taking one camera, still sitting in the room and actually doing this content. Today, he has every mobile, and he was telling me that on an average, he has 5 invites for a mobile phone launch every week. So we're seeing that at least on the video space.
Interesting, very interesting. Yeah?
Yeah,
Anoop?
if I may just come in,
Yeah.
Vanita. So I think you did call out Aaj Tak, right? Like,
Use it as an example because it came long back, 2000.
Exactly,
you know?
right? So an example which, something which we are very proud of is, say, the marquee brand within our portfolio, which is Asianet News, right? It's 21 odd years, undisputed #1 in that particular market in terms of ratings and stuff like that. But even if you look at the last year performance, we are now at a stage where we're competing not with the fellow news channels, but we're competing with the general entertainment channels.
Absolutely.
So the news, so a few factors here which sort of work, and glad that Rahul called that out in terms of South Indian markets per se, which I represent, is the propensity to consume in good content is far higher on, on digital as well as, and we've been early movers in the digital space down south. If you look at, again, I think I just take YouTube as an example, Rahul, and you will have a lot of examples. The number of YouTube creators who are creating, on a monthly basis, millions and millions of views.
Absolutely.
And, especially in regional languages, Telugu, Tamil being the forerunners, and followed closely by Malayalam and Kannada. That ecosystem of content creators exists. I think what is an ecosystem challenge is how do revenue and profitability sort of follow the creators and support the creators to create a sort of a well-sustained ecosystem.
So you're saying that creating original content is not, but it is the monetization challenge, which is.
Exactly. So you did point out fonts. Obviously, I'm sure, and we are also a part of one of the Google's Indic language publication groups, right? Monetizations like AdSense, AdX platforms, and how do you bring about palatability with respect to, they've already done fairly significant work in English and Hindi for publishers, but how do you quickly bring this on to the other regional languages, which it's no more small. Their own report, I think KPMG Google report itself quotes about 30-40% of this entire internet user base being only in these 4-5 regional languages, which we sort of represent, right? So that's something which we look forward to. And as much as we are trying to push the barriers and trying to innovate in terms of monetization opportunities, the technology platforms like Google, the Facebooks, also need to sort of come in and pitch in to sort of make this well sustainable.
No, but when you say monetization challenge, is it the CPMs that you get? Because you're getting the traffic.
Right.
So what is the monetization challenge?
No,
Could it be the ad shares?
For example, the user experience itself. When you place an ad in a regional language or display ad, the way it sort of blends itself into a page or an app is far different from today how it is accepted in an English ecosystem, right? We all use so many apps in English, but when you look at a regional language product, the user experience goes for a toss. And then we wouldn't do as a publication do anything to harm a user experience. We would like to balance that out because product comes.
So it is to do with the software and with a whole lot of.
I don't think so. That's the thought. I think monetization anyways comes the last. I think if you want to monetize, you have to have a product with a scale. And if you look at the entire language proliferation that has happened probably in the last 18 months to 2 years, I remember that 2.5 years back, we were about 15 million unique users and we are now 100 million.
Now they're saying the next 500 million is...
So I think, and also I think the bigger challenge in monetization is also the understanding of the entire ecosystem and looking at what are the creatives that are running on the site. And you might find it very, simple, but it is really funny. Why would you have an English ad running on a Hindi site? You never run an English ad on a Hindi news channel or a Hindi GC. Why would you do that? Vice versa is true, but that's not the case. But it's just the way that the entire ecosystem was thinking, and they had created one creative and they thought that they would run it. And in spite of the fact that we had gone ahead and shown that a Hindi creative on a Hindi site, and we had given them 4x performance, better response and better CTRs. So I think this is the entire stuff that has to be thought through. The content is one part and will continues to remain so, but content has to be looked in totality. We should not only look at the text content, but the video and everything else.
Everything.
Yeah,
So it's a chicken and egg thing in many ways, actually.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah, Pradeep, please.
See, the whole logic of monetization and revenues and the outcomes are all output indices. I think there is too much obsession in the industry of dealing with output indices and being able to put a number on the table that says that, hey, we have arrived. It is more a wishful thinking. I think, see, the problem is not just limited to publishers per se in terms of how they're looking at this business. All publishers or media owners in India typically come from a perspective where there is a very predictable business model. You invest X amount, you have Y level of OPEX that goes on a regular basis. There is a predictability to the type of content that you generate. 90% of the content is your own. 10% content is what user generates in terms of what you get citizens or others telling you a story, and you repurpose that content and go out. The digital ecosystem works very differently, where the user-generated content actually plays a far more important role in the overall content availability than what the publisher themselves generate. And I think for the publishers to reconcile with that and to be able to filter and monitor that content becomes extremely important to be able to hold the audiences. The monetization will come once the audiences get hold. So now, for example, if you look at any of the I'm sorry, I will probably take a few names, but let's say you look at a Times internet site and look at the kind of stories that are getting covered. Compare that with any XYZ Hindi or regional language newspaper site. You will get stories of extraterrestrials, of Bhoot Pretatma, of molestations, of chamatkar happening, all kinds of funny stories, which typically draw in a lot of audience, but are not really good quality content for a sustained user base to come to you. So I think the imperative in front of all the publishers, especially those such as ourselves who are really infants in this business, is to make sure that you work to create a sustainable source of content which is relevant to the audience and which contains the ethos of you as a publication group that you have maintained over a period of time.
So there's an integrity in terms of what you're taking.
I would debate that. I would contest that. I think it will be slightly crude to say that a lot of language sites would do that kind of stuff. You have to look at and most of the stuff is working on what kind of content gets out there. Now the sanity of content is how you probably look at it. And we have been, when we look at the content and we evaluate a lot of different stuff, you probably have a similar content across genre. And when I say across genre, I actually mean across genre. You look at any language globally, the content nature is pretty much the same. It is not the same. You would have the same content that would run on any English side, and I'm talking about anything globally, that would happen. So the quality of the content, the rendition of the content would definitely change because the language will have its own nuances. I'm looking at it. But I think the challenge is different. Okay. When you can always, a lot of people have been contesting, for example, like the BuzzFeed content is very crappy. When you talk to NY Times, they said that, this is not the content we will do. And BuzzFeed says that this is the content that's giving me traction. And what is an issue with a cat and a dog content? I mean, the cat, people love cat and we'll do cat content. And it is not as trivial. So they have a huge science behind it that says that what content to create.
So that's a philosophical.
No, and I would actually just like to do a small retort to that. And Gyan, that is where the problem lies. A publisher which has a certain brand identity and a certain connect with the audiences basis a particular publication that you have, if you as a publisher are trying to go digital, your ability to maintain the integrity of your brand becomes important. If you're trying to become a BuzzFeed or a HuffPost or any of these viral sites, then you're not what you were to begin with. Then what is there to bind the consumer or bind the audience?
But then publishers have done different. So there's Catch and there's Delio and there is, everybody doing a completely different take, which is nothing to do with the main brands which they come out of. So sorry, Anoop, you've been wanting to say something?
I tend to agree more with what Gyan said. I think rather than looking at the audiences and saying that a lot of mythological stuff or astrology or chamatkari stuff will work for a regional audience, or Indian language audience, I stand corrected, is probably not true. I think it is the audience's aspiration to reach out and consume interesting content is there. Otherwise, for example, English news, English itself as a genre, as a language, if you look at it, South India consumes a lot of English content, right? It is almost like a second language, dominant language there, where even for news channels, South Indian capital cities are the largest.
NDTV and Times now do very well down
south. It depends upon how you present that content to them, in what interesting formats can you innovate and give that to them. A paper going, and that's something learning from ourselves. We also run a Kannada newspaper. Just putting out an e-paper in a traditional PDF and saying the user just go and read it, vis-a-vis trying to pull out snippets, pull out quotes, present that to them in a different style, makes a lot of difference. So we do not need to look at the Indian language audience in any, with any other filter or any other lens. To that extent,
it's a multilingual audience in many ways. I'm going to ask for questions now. Yeah, please. This is the man who runs Raftar, by the way. So, who owns and runs Raftar? So, Lavish.
I think this has been an amazing group.
I told you should come for this session.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there are two classes of issues which I come up, which I'll just share with you. And I'm sure you all face them in fun. One, as a small publisher, the quality of expertise that you can access in the vernacular space is very, very low. And that's obviously the problem is that the people who have experience are the ones who are not really paid well enough in the past. And it's just an industry which is going up. So, but to be able to get that experience is almost next to impossible. That's one of the problems that I'm facing, and I know a whole lot of other people that I meet tend to face. So that's one. The second is a very quirky Indian thing. The bulk of the searches that happen to be in Roman vernacular. I'm not saying Roman Hindi, but Roman vernacular.
That's interesting. Okay.
Voice search is taking off. It'll take a while. But then what do I, forget about SEO. What URL do I put? Do I put it in Roman Hindi, Hindi, or Devanagari Hindi, Devanagari English, right? That's also used quite often. And English.
You can put anything. Really. You can put anything. Nothing will work.
It gets to be a problem.
No, you can put anything. Nothing will work.
Rahul,
Okay.
Rahul, you want to take that on?
That's like the million-dollar answer.
So Google search has been there for a while, right? And Hindi search it's been a year we've been working with Hindi search. And it's the first alphas which came out, they were just like, the experience was very bad, right? And over time, we've been working on this, right? And also what we've done is, so today the Hindi search product, like most of the geos, if you are from a Hindi geo, you would get the option of a tab search. So you'll get an English experience and you'll get a Hindi experience depending on that, right? Now the search quality obviously becomes better as more people use the search in Hindi languages, right? And obviously we're coming up with more languages on search. But so that's an initial stage, right? What experience you have on Google search today in English is not done over a year, so it'll take time, number one. Voice search will obviously, it's not going to take time, it's here. So currently Hindi voice search is growing at 400%, right? So embrace that. To your first point of actually
getting tech talent, because he was saying the talent which comes to Indian languages.
So I think I can talk about what we are doing, and for the audience, this was not a planted question. But what we are doing is, we've been working with news labs, and please share your coordinates with me, and I'll hook that up. So what we've done is, a year and a half back, we realized that in Google, we had to work. So we've had a relationship with the publication industry for a long time, right? We've done monetization products like AdSense, where we put ads and we do revenue share. So that's been there for over 10 years. But we realized that we have to do better. So in the last year and a half, we have something called News Labs, where we actually come to your offices, we set up these trainings, we help journalists think digital, to help them to make more creative stories, right? Work with social media platforms. So currently, as of last month, we've already trained 4,000 journalists. And if you would want to be a part of that, we do this every month. If you want us to come to your office, so we have these trainings happening all the time. We did a last session at Talk Journalism in Jaipur, where we had like 3 days of...
oh, I was there.
Yeah, so we had so that's something which we are really, really keen to partner with anybody. So I'll be around, just take my coordinates and we can have that.
Good, great. Anybody else wants to add something? Questions? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which gets to be the bigger problem to access.
That's correct, right? So I'm not the correct person to exactly give you the tech specs, but having said that, we could do a session at your place and we could actually help you with that, like how you have to set up everything. Right?
I'm going to throw this to the other publishers then. How do you deal with the, do you have the problem of lack of access to good technological talent when it comes to Indian languages, enough expertise? Because there isn't enough body of work around it. And how do you deal with it?
So I think, talent will obviously is a problem. I think a lot of the technology stack that we have created, we had to do in-house because we could not find actually that. Just a case in point was that we are working on a recommendation engine and personalization for the last 3 years. We took 9 months just to build the Hindi dictionary. Because otherwise if you don't get the context of a word, how can you even recommend? And most of the technologies that we have found only works for English languages. So yes, that is a
block.
That's a challenge.
I think that's very critical because we came to Gyan and the company and said, help us work better on search. Right? Okay. So a lot of the work which they have done, they've actually helped us. So just that ecosystem also, because we are a platform, and I think they were kind enough that we actually worked.
Gyan royalty lena?
No, but literally, right? Because they did that, right? Because obviously he saw the first experience, so he was like very passionate to get that right.
Yeah, but if I may just draw a parallel here, 15 years back, somewhere in 2000, Z had just started getting into regional languages. And what they would do is they would dub their Hindi programs and put it in Tamil, Bangla, Marathi. Z was one of the first big ones to attempt non-Hindi languages. And over the years, quality was a big issue. And the fact was that just because you speak Marathi or Hindi doesn't mean you're used to a bad product. I mean, Marathi, for example, I speak Marathi. The tradition of literature is so strong that a bad story is never going to work in the Marathi market. So over the years, they've realized they're doing original production. And now, the kind of quality of production, I could argue about the storylines, etc., but the quality of production on Non-Hindi, Hindi of course used to get top dollar on content expense. And that has created more profitability, more top line. So when I say Star is a 10,000 crore company and they get 25% of their top line from non-Hindi languages, that's huge number, 2,500 crore, largely from 4 or 5 languages. And actually there are only 9 or 10 languages, you know, and each of them is like a European market, I think, 50, 60 million people. So it is, I think it's a chicken and egg thing, you know, once the investment starts in that. Sorry, any other questions here? Nobody's interested in Indian language? Yeah, sorry.
Hi, I just wanted to find out that when you compare the kind of comparing like with like, if you know, you're part of Google Exchange, right? Your Google ads are running on your website. What is the differential in the rates between, say, English, Hindi, and other Indian languages? Take some major ones. I mean, I just want a sense of it.
Go first, but I can give the...
You give a first shot.
No, so let me just say that it's a complete mystery box to us. We get a check at the end of the month. We have no clue where it comes from and what's the logic applied. So you better tell us.
So yes. Okay, there's a big gap, number one, right? So therefore, the similar content, and to Gyan's point, right, I agree with the fact that all content is great content, right? You just got to know your users where they are. But when we look at the industry perspective, and we've been trying to do this for a while now, but everything what usually happens is technology, users, most of the time, 99% of the time, advertisers are last, right? And if there are any agency folks in the room, so what happens is, and I'll tell you what the problem, I think Anoop again mentioned. So when you actually look at, when you create a creative, on 90% of the creatives on our Indian language sites are in English. Now, advertisers and agency creative departments know this, and we've been advocating it. We, in fact, when I say we, me, Google, and the entire Indian language ecosystem, that 4 times the more efficiencies, right? You are actually talking about CPM, CPI, trying to get efficiencies of 5%. But if you actually put a creative in a local language, right, and what you're trying to target, you're going to have probability of 88% higher. And that was in our KPMG report. Higher CTR, right? So the propensity to click for an Indian language user, if they see a creative in their own language, is 88% higher. Now, so that's where it actually begins from, right? So there is a huge gap. And I think when we look at, when we're trying to do, and Gyan mentioned about scale. Also what happens is that a lot of the Indian language publications have also now been fragmented, right? Because there's small pieces, but what we've tried to do, again, from a team, and I think Gyan is a part of it, and so we've tried to do this, and he can talk more about it, that we've actually created a package which is more for the industry, that we've created an Indian language pack, right? And the Indian language pack today, daily unique users are 8 million in an Indian language pack, so it's substantial, right? You've got 15, 16 million impressions, and you've got 8 million unique users. So that is something which we are taking to the market, because what we've done is we've got all the players together and they say, okay, fine, let's tackle this as a big pack. So that's
the pricing is still different from English?
Let me give you a different perspective. So I think he was trying to be nice. Yeah, he was trying to be nice. See, I think the difference would be whatever difference you want it to be. Okay, when we started out about 2 years back, I saw that the difference were to the extent of about 2x. So if I was getting a $1 CPM, English would get about $2.5 about a 2 year back. Now, that is because when I would go to an advertiser and they would say, okay, fine, Hindi, acha, theek hai. If first we were afterthought, कि कुछ बचेगा तो तुम्हें देते हैं, अच्छा अब दे रहे हो तो मैं सस्ता दूंगा, so that's a whole. But what we realized in the last 1 year, we worked a lot on the product, and we worked a lot on programmatic. Now, once you move to programmatic, the entire language differentiation gets killed. And what
numbers which are...
No, so what happens is, what we did was we worked a lot on the product. Now, if you have to deal with a machine, you think like a machine. Okay, and very simple as that. When machine is running, it really doesn't understand whether this is Hindi or English or Gujarati, or Marathi or Tamil. The way the AdX works is, okay, this site is giving me a better performance. I'm willing to pay higher rate to this site, and I'm willing to buy more on this site. So what we have done in the last year and a half is that we have worked extensively on the product. And one of the biggest changes we actually made in the last 2 years was, like Gautam also mentioned, but what changes we have made is that move from a content company to a product company. No. Today, that's what I'm saying. Today, on my mobile side, I get higher rates than any English site in the country. Any English site in the country. You have
Because of programmatic.
Because of
programmatic. Because you have, see, the entire industry is shifting.
It's very interesting.
I don't want to have that rate discussion because I think we should have audience discussion.
Anoop, Pradeep, what's your experience been like on this?
So it's been very similar. So I think the disparity definitely exists between English, Hindi, and the other
But that
other
exists in
languages.
mainstream also.
It's
a given in the market.
It's a given,
You
and
just
it's a
deal with
reflection
it.
of what the today the advertisers and the brands look at, and how they look at these languages and what sort of priorities, right?
It's narrowed a lot, but over the
But
years.
yeah, so one point which I think what Gyan mentioned, which is interesting, is around programmatic. It's almost trying to say how can you tune your system, how can you sort of mimic certain things or almost think like what the algorithms are thinking and sort of ensure that you are on top of your game. Rather than the ecosystem facilitating this entire thing there, Gyan, we are almost trying to, sort of, push it through, find a backdoor, figure out how they think, what are the keywords or meta tags which they would sort of prioritize on, and then sort of build on it.
I mean,
right?
you take the problem in your hand.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
don't live with the fact that a language will get a lower rate. I mean,
Exactly.
take the problem in your hand and do that.
Exactly.
No, actually, the way I would look at it, and since I look at the entire business and not just digital, I get 3x the rates of English in my market in Marathi publication. That's simply because of the kind of dominance of the media coverage that we have in our market. Applying that model to a digital means that I have to be able to repurpose the content and work with the advertisers and work with the agencies to be able to do that. So today, unlike, like Gyan is saying that programmatic is a big source of revenue, and I don't know what percentages are, but for us, the revenue gets split into 3 ways. So there is the direct sales that we do with the local real estate clients, local education clients, and we get top dollar because that client is accustomed to dealing with Sakal at a particular price rate, which is a premium rate,
So
and he
you-
knows
he'll
that the
not
digital
discount.
audience
Okay.
that we will bring will be of the same order, and our rates are off the chart. I mean, you can't even compare it with
That's
anything
where the
you get on
integrity,
programmatic.
holding the integrity of the brand
Absolutely.
online holds.
Which is why we want to maintain the integrity of our content. The second thing that we do is we work with agency ecosystem very well because that's the traditional model of print selling that we've adopted. So agencies know that they can charge much better margins on digital projects that they sell to products that they sell to the end client, and the end client typically does not have adequate visibility to how much they're charging. In case of print or television, it's very clear that you get 1.5%, 2%, your net of 15% you get, but 15% never passes
Right,
through.
that-
It's
that
a
digital
2%
is a
game.
different
But
one.
digital is complete Wild West. I mean, the
Why do you
agencies.
think all the agencies talk it up? I think our time. Yeah,
I'm
Pradeep?
sorry, but they can get away with practically anything under the sun and the client has no clue what's going on. So that allows you some level of visibility. And programmatic, like I said, baby steps, learning. Hopefully we'll make more money there one day.
Great. Fantastic discussion. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, everybody.
all
Thank
right.
you.